Well, earlier I spoke to Chile's ambassador to the UK, Rafael Moreno. He explained why the death toll was not as high as it could have been.
After so many earthquakes we have had, what we do have is a very strict rule for buildings. So we need to create chains, concrete, and even if we have a building of 30 floors, we have to follow that. Construction in Chile is much more expensive than any other country in the world. Even in bungalow, you have to follow the rules, otherwise you will not be approved there. So that's why the death toll is not so high, because we had earthquakes in 1939, in 1960, major earthquakes, where the number of people that really suffer was much numerous than now.
What about the stages now looking forward in terms of recovery? How will the government structure this? How will it play itself out?
We have declared the area of catastrophe, covering these 2 million people. Is almost 800 kilometers long. Now, money has been made available already through the law, and we do have savings, and this has been declared last night by the Minister of Finance. We will not save any penny in order to recreate the conditions. So we will take care of bridges, roads, hospitals, and anything which is schools, obviously. We are postponing the initiation of the school year, which is supposed to start tomorrow.
And in terms of financial assistance, how much money are we talking about that is available right now?
Well, I believe we have at least a couple of billions dollars saved. And we don't know exactly the amount we will need, but money is not the problem now. Our problem is to give comfort to the peoples, look for those who are missing, and recreate the normality.
Praise has been given to the international community for offering assistance. How much help have you had at this stage from the international community?
Well, we have very many offers. Here I have received, we opened the embassy yesterday and today, and we are receiving phone calls from agencies which are specialized in finding people or rescue and so forth. We are very grateful to that, but for the time being, we do have the elements to do it. If we need help, we will ask.
So you haven't as yet asked for assistance from...
we have announced worldwide, thank you very much, but for the time being, we do not need that help.
Chile's ambassador to the UK, Rafael Moreno, speaking to me a little earlier. There's much more on our website, bbc.com/news, including an animated guide to why earthquakes are among the most destructive natural events. And if you're in one of those affected areas, do of course send us your experiences. We'd love to hear from you. Go to the website, bbc.com/news.
The Chilean government says it's doing all it can to help those affected by one of the strongest earthquakes ever recorded. Officials say more than 400 people are known to have died now, and hundreds of thousands of homes have been destroyed. Overall, up to 2 million Chileans are thought to be affected. In the cities and towns nearest to the epicenter, roads have been blocked and communications have been disrupted. Rescuers are trying to reach 100 people thought to be trapped in a block of flats in the city closest to the quake's epicenter, Concepcion. The earthquake also triggered a tsunami which spread thousands of miles across the Pacific. But the tsunami warnings have now been cancelled or downgraded. Candace Peart reports from Santiago.
The quake, one of Chile's biggest, kicked off a tsunami felt around the Pacific. It left many coastal regions underwater. The country's basic infrastructure is in pieces. Around the city of Concepcion, near the epicenter, whole villages have been flattened, highways severely damaged. Across the country, hospitals and public buildings are in ruins. Millions of homes have been destroyed. Many prefer to sleep outside for fear of the aftershocks.
There are about 12 of us out here. We live on the 3rd floor and it seemed to be swaying horribly. We're staying out here all night. I'm too frightened to go back inside.
We don't want to be inside. We just keep running to the bathroom. We plan to spend the whole night here, outside. It's safer.
As she addressed the nation, President Michelle Bachelet said the task ahead was difficult.
I have declared a disaster area in 6 regions. This will allow us to immediately make resources available to help people in the affected areas.
The government appears to be well coordinated. The main international airport, also heavily damaged, had closed, leaving many travellers stranded, but it's expected to reopen in a day or 2.
Chileans are used to earthquakes, but nothing prepared them for the scale of the devastation this time. Santiago is expected to get back to normal quite quickly, but the damage done to the country's roads is going to make that task all the more difficult. Candice Piet, BBC News, Santiago.
The earthquake was also felt in Argentina. Our correspondent Daniel Schreimler has been monitoring events from Buenos Aires.
Authorities in Chile have said they're going to need at least 72 hours to get some kind of idea about what is needed. We've only been about 30 or so hours since that earthquake struck. And there's still many areas which have proved to be inaccessible. They're still trying to get to some of those areas around the city of Concepcion. So until they do, and I say it's going to be another couple of days, they say, until they have really begin to kind of realize the full extent of this very, very powerful earthquake.
But already, even in these early stages, it's becoming clear that they've got a huge task on their hand to deal with the devastation caused by this. Tens of thousands of people sleeping out because they're too frightened to go back into their homes.
Well, that's right. I mean, Chileans of all the nations in Latin America are probably the best equipped to deal with this devastation. Very well organised. They're one of the more affluent countries in Latin America. At the same time, this is going to cost tens of billions of dollars to rebuild. And as I say, to really gauge the full extent of what this all means, to get to some of those inaccessible areas, there's a huge job ahead, as the President Bachelet was explaining.
And as you say, Chile is one of the best equipped nations in Latin America to deal with this, but there have been some reports of looting.
Well, there have. I mean, there's been some areas where people have complained that aid, food and water haven't been reaching them. Security forces have been put out onto the streets as soon as those reports came in. There was one place where 200 or so prisoners escaped from a jail very close to the affected area. So there are, yes, big security concerns, but the Chilean authorities do seem to be moving very, very quickly to stem that looting.
Well, earlier I spoke to Tracy Rhines. She's Director of International Disaster Response for the American Red Cross in Washington. I asked her what her organisation has started doing to help the survivors of the earthquake in Chile.
Well, the International Red Cross Network has already been moving people towards the border of Chile through Argentina to have a small team to assist the Chilean Red Cross in their assessments and to see what additional services we can provide. I know the British Red Cross has also pledged financial assistance, as has the American Red Cross and the International Federation Network.
But the Chilean government is saying that it doesn't want international aid to come in until it can fully assess the scale of the disaster and what help it needs precisely, perhaps mindful of the rather chaotic aid effort after the earthquake in Haiti.
Well, I think it's just a bit early to tell. The situation in Chile and Haiti are so different. I think it's clear to see the infrastructure in Chile is at a different state. The government ability to respond, the infrastructure there is a bit different. So I think in all disasters you need to really get an idea of what is the need and what capacities you have in country to respond, and then ask for assistance following that. So I think it's a very normal situation to do that. The Red Cross is standing by ready to help. We've already put things in place to do that as soon as it's deemed necessary, and that's what the Red Cross does.
And as you say, the infrastructure is very different because Haiti was the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, whereas Chile is one of the richest countries in Latin America.
Yeah, I mean, you know, really when you have things like building codes and you have a national defense structure and a government that can have a system and a national emergency operations center to respond, you can see how that might impact the ability to take care of things in countries. So it's early days. I think the government of Chile is obviously trying to get their head around exactly what's happened and exactly what they can do. We all know there's significant damage, but again, we just stand ready to assist the Chilean Red Cross and the government of Chile if they need assistance from outside of what they have in country.
Tracy Rhines from the American Red Cross. Tsunami warnings were issued in 53 countries and territories across the Pacific Ocean after the earthquake in Chile, including places as far apart as Japan, New Zealand and Hawaii. But all the alerts have now been either downgraded or cancelled. In Japan, officials are still urging thousands of people in coastal areas to stay away from their homes. Here's our correspondent in Tokyo, Roland Burke.
Half a world away from Chile, Japan braced itself for the worst. The sea rose to flood quaysides, seeping into port warehouses. For hours there were fears this could be just the start of a series of destructive tsunamis, triggered by the earthquake on the far side of the Pacific. The waves, said the authorities, could strike along the entire eastern coast, in some places perhaps more than 3 meters high. The Prime Minister Yukio Hatayama urged people to stay away from the sea.
Even 2-metre waves cause a lot of damage. 2 to 3 metre high waves are forecast, so I need everybody to be absolutely cautious.
Hundreds of thousands of people were moved from their homes, but the danger passed. In Hawaii, in the middle of the ocean, the police drove through the streets warning people to stay away from the water. Holidaymakers in hotels watched from a safe height.
It's been such a long time since we've had a full coastal evacuation. We really weren't sure how people were going to behave. And by and large, they behaved very well.
Here too, the waves were small. Hawaii dodged a bullet, warning centre officials said. In New Zealand, boats strained at their moorings as the waves swept in. But it took time-lapse photography to see the bays filling with seawater. The tsunami had nothing like the force feared. On the Cook Islands, the ocean receded, exposing the seabed. People watched from high ground as it came in again. Small waves were reported from the far east of Russia. An alert was in place there too, but there was no damage. In Japan, the warning stayed place long after other nations had been given the all-clear. The country remaining cautious in case the sea had more in store. Roland Burke, BBC News, Tokyo.
In other news, at least 8 people have been killed in heavy flooding in the southwest of Haiti. About 1 million Haitians are still homeless following the earthquake there in January, which killed up to 230,000 people. The country's third biggest city, Les Cayes, has been inundated. At least 22 people have been killed in storms that have lashed parts of Western Europe. Hurricane-force winds lashed the coasts of Spain, Portugal and France, leaving more than 1 million households without power. And flood alerts have been issued across Britain.
These houses are almost fully submerged after the violent storms which swept through parts of France. Water levels rose so much that people took refuge on the roofs of their homes. The Vendée in the northwest of France was one of the areas worst affected. Here, at least 7 people have died. Local authorities say the dead either drowned or were hit by falling trees and branches. In Spain, wind speeds reached 147 kilometers an hour and thousands of people had no power. The storm crashed through Galicia in the northwest of the country, sparing no thought for anything in its path. Portugal was placed on orange alert, the second highest by civil protection authorities. The island of Madeira, recently affected by a devastating flood, was also hit by the latest storm. Here in Paredes, in the north of the country, a 10-year-old boy was killed while playing football. He was struck by a falling tree. In Valongo, in northern Portugal, power lines are being repaired and work has begun to clear the damage. Near Lisbon, the capital city, residents wanting to do something make fruitless effort to clear water from their homes. Alexandra Mackenzie, BBC News.